Hey y'all, welcome back to Confederate Shop's YouTube channel. So this past week, I have been reading a brand new book that is new for our library here on confederateshop.com and at our store, Crossroads Country Store. And it's a very interesting subject. And before I tell you what it is, I want to just say the past few years, over the destruction of much of our history, as you know, the past few years, monuments have been taken down, street names have been changed, military base names have been changed. There is an overwhelming Marxist purge of American history. And it's not just Confederate history, it's early American history too, but more of the focus is on Confederate history. That's the first thing in their sights. And so because of this, I've read a lot of the monument dedication speeches. I have read much of the history behind why these icons were placed where they were, why the names were put on these buildings and on these streets and whatnot. And one monument in particular that you've probably heard of, and it's recently been removed, is the Arlington Confederate Memorial. Now that memorial was designed by Moses Ezekiel. Moses was the first Jewish cadet of the Virginia Military Institute. He was a renowned sculptor and painter after the war, and he made this magnificent, beautiful monument that was erected in Arlington National Cemetery. Arlington, of course, is the former home of Robert E. Lee. And you know, after the war, or during the war, they had taken Lee's home and made it into a grave site, which was, you know, a horrible thing to do. But around the year 1900, I believe it was a few years prior, they erected this beautiful monument in dedication to the Confederate soldier, and it was part of reconciliation. And in attendance there was the President of the United States. One president in particular, though, who I want to focus on, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me right now, but I will put it in my sources below so you can go look it up. I might even reference it down below so you know, but I'm just going to paraphrase it. William McKinley, a former Union veteran himself, he was an officer in an Ohio unit during the war, became President William McKinley after the war. He did a great deal in bringing the country back together after the war. And he said, and I paraphrase, that we should share in the honoring and dedication of Confederate graves, that it's our responsibility to take care and treat these soldiers well because they were Americans and represent American valor. Now, that's a former Union veteran. That's a United States president saying this. But he wasn't the only president who supported defending, honoring Confederate history. There were many. But I say all that because after the war, too, there were many individuals, prominent Confederates, some not so prominent Confederates, who served the federal government. Some of the more common ones are John Mosby, Mosby's men from Northern Virginia, many great exploits. We sell a lot of great books, Mosby's memoirs. There are a lot of individuals that served with Mosby that were gallant men, but Mosby, after the war, served the federal government. And he was still loved by many of the Southerners. But another one that you've probably heard of is Longstreet. And Longstreet wasn't loved as much by Confederates after the war for various reasons. But these individuals served the federal government, and in the spirit of reconciliation, they were called Patriots Twice. And that's what this book is about this week. And I find it very fascinating. I find it very interesting. Stephen Dill Lee was another one of these individuals. You probably heard that name. He was the one that authored the Great Charge within the Sons of Confederate Veterans. I'll link that below. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you go in the description and just read the charge of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. But there were many of these individuals that were Confederates, served the Confederacy, and then after the war had served the federal government. But I found this book interesting. It is a great read, and it's very well researched. Stephen M. Hood, he's written another couple books too. One in particular, which I have on my bookshelf, but I do not offer in my shop yet, is a book on one of his distant ancestors, General Hood, right, from Texas. So, yeah, he's a great author, he's a great writer, and it's very well researched. So I do have plenty of copies of this book. You can get it this week. It's a brand new one. I've also got a really, really cool poster that I'm featuring in this week's newsletter as well. So check that out. It's an antique poster from the centennial celebration of the war. You can get that at an excellent, awesome price, because these are antiques. Dad found these things years ago, and they've been sitting in storage, and another one of those items that we completely forgot about, but it's a genuine vintage antique poster. So check that out. I'll link it down below in this video. It's featured in our newsletter this week. But as always, thank you so much for supporting my work here on ConfederateShop.com and all of our social media platforms. I hope you all have a great day.